I always love spending some time with Doug Williams, the Redskins Senior Vice President of Player Development. First-round pick by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers back in 1978. Got a biopic based on his life coming out. Doug joins us on the program. Wow, that's quite a tiger you have behind us. Your Grambling tiger behind us, Doug. That's menacing. Oh, do you have your mute button on?
Yes, I'm sorry.
There you go.
I got to learn how to run this stuff, man. Everything is technology today.
I thought you were on a silent count at the line of scrimmage there, and you weren't saying anything.
Much noise in the
stadium. Take me back. I know that you have a book, an autobiography called Quarter Black. Why do you respond, or why did you title it Quarter Black?
Well, because everywhere I went, when I came out, Dan, if you can remember, and going to Tampa, every article that was written, it was never Doug Williams, the quarterback of the Buccaneers. It was either Tampa Bay's black quarterback or either Doug Williams, Tampa Bay's black quarterback. And if you read early in the book, I always say they the one who titled it Quarter Black. So that was a good name for the book at the time.
And I remember, didn't somebody ask you how long you've been a black quarterback when you were at the Super Bowl?
That was one of the media days. A guy named Bush Jones, bless his soul, he's gone on to heaven now. I knew Bush because he worked in Jackson, Mississippi with the paper, and I looked at that from a standpoint, you got a guy, he was nervous, he wanted to get his questions out because so many people was around. I don't think he meant it the way it came out, and he just wanted to know how long I've been a black quarterback. Well, my answer to him was, since I left Grambling, because when I was at Grambling, I wasn't a black quarterback.
I wonder if the Buccaneers didn't draft you in the first round. I wonder if you would have been drafted in the first round. Do you think you still would have been taken in the first round?
I do. I really do. It was either two teams, I think, that was a great possibility. And let me say it before I get there, June Jones, I think we all know who June Jones are.
Yeah.
But June Jones was the backup quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons behind Steve Bykowski. And we played the Atlanta Falcons, Tampa and the Falcons played. And after the game, June Jones walked up to me and he said, man, it's a shame. He said, because actually you should have been the number one pick in the whole draft. And that's here or there. But I think Tampa was smart enough to know that black quarterback coming out in 1978, they could trade and get some more draft picks and everything, and I probably would still be there at number 17. And they made that move, so that's what happened. But I do believe two other teams, and just from conversation with these teams during that time, and that was either the Dallas Cowboys, Gil Bryant, and John Wooten. Talked to them a lot at that particular time, and the other one was Bart Starr at Green Bay.
Oh, that would have been interesting.
But Green Bay had two draft picks that year. They picked James Lofton, and I don't know who they picked down. I think they was picking 26 early on, and then number 26. So I could have easily been the late pick for the Green Bay Packers.
How did you keep this inside? What you were experiencing racism at the time, but I don't know to what degree.
Well, for me to be able to handle it, and even to today, Dan, I think I handled it with a lot of grace because number one, I grew up in South Louisiana, and I understood what racism was way back when. Born in 1955, so I was a young boy during the civil rights time. So when you sit around, you hear your grandmother and your granddaddy, your mom, your dad talk about what's going on. I knew every Friday night from crossroad to crossroad where I lived, there was a crossroad down to my right was about a mile, and down to my left was about a mile. And in between there, it was all black families. So every Friday night, that was a cross burning at those intersections. And, all the men in the neighborhood, when the cross go up, would get in their cars and trucks, with their guns and stuff to try to find out who was burning the cross. It's one of those scare tactics back in the day as to stay in your place. And I can remember going on the way to Baton Rouge, a small town, actually, Zachary, I'm in Zachary, small town, Baker. I remember stopping at the red light one time, a little boy in the back of the car with my dad, and actually a guy with a hood came up to give us a pamphlet of the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, that's how prevalent it was back in the day. So you understood what you was up against back in those days.
Wait, a member of the KKK gave you a pamphlet? Your dad a pamphlet?
My dad didn't take it. I mean, he walked up to the car at the red light. It was kind of like when you go place and you see people who are kind of homeless asking for money. They was walking around passing out pamphlets, and everybody who stopped at the red light, I guess, recruiting for the Ku Klux Klan.
How'd your dad explain why they're burning a cross and why these men are wearing sheets over their heads?
Well, the most important thing for us was, 5 boys, 3 girls, was always be in the right place at the right time. Don't get caught in situations that something cruel can happen to you. My dad and them always talked about some of the things that happen. You talk about people getting, murdered and stuff like that. Nobody ever find out what happened to them. Things like that. It was almost a scare tactic back in the day, as don't do this. And I remember when LSU and Ole Miss played, the highway that I live off was like a main strip from Mississippi all the way to Baton Rouge. I lived off Plank Road, Highway 67. And when they played each other, when Ole Miss had to come to Baton Rouge, we was not allowed to be on the streets at that particular time because crazy stuff happened. People throw stuff out the window. And I did one day going from my house to my grandmother's house, who lived about a half a mile down, and walking on the neutral ground, got hit in the face with a chocolate malt. Just so happened it had to be chocolate, so it tastes pretty good.
He's Doug Williams, Redskins Senior Vice President of Player Development, former Super Bowl MVP. I thought of Super Bowl 22. Timmy Smith, your running back, he was number 20. What was his number?
Tim is 36.
36. Tony Lilly was 22, wasn't he?
Tony was 22.
Tony Lilly was the defensive back of the Broncos. I felt bad. You were picking on Tony Lilly in Super Bowl 20. You were picking on 22 in Super Bowl 22, Doug, weren't you?
I wasn't picking on him. He just happened to be in the wrong place.
Oh, Tony got burned.
I remember the Ricky Grant TD on the play action on a 60 counter play action. We ran the 60 counter so well all the time, and he came up and bit on the run. And it was almost like when Ricky went behind him, I could see him turn around and saying, "Damn."
I think he's a high school coach now.
In this area, he's a high school coach in the Virginia area. I saw him about 3 years ago. Him and I talked about 3 years.
You should just show up in your Redskins jersey and with a football there and see his reaction there.
I wouldn't do that. Him and I talked about it. He laughed about it today, and I think we all got a good laugh out of it.
Now, it was more overt. You were mentioning the racism that you face, but then you get into the NFL where it's a little more covert, it feels like. What was that like, the difference of growing up, and then you go to the NFL where you think, I'm a first-round draft pick, I'm successful. We are almost going to the Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the worst team in football 2 years earlier. And then what happens?
Well, the thing about it, that's old cliche. You can't go no further south than Florida. And I was in Tampa, Florida. And when I first got there, my first year was good. But at the same time, we ended up 5-7. My 5-11, my rookie year, I got my jaw broke and all that. And Ricky Bell, bless his soul, was the guy consoled me probably every week when things weren't going well and people was booing. Ricky Bell was the one to put his arms around me and say, "Hey, I've had to go through it, man. It's tough, but just keep going forward." And the second year was great, Dan, because we was winning. We won the first 5 games out the box, and we lost 3 in a row down the stretch and had to win the last game of the year in order to get in the playoffs. And we did that 3-0 against the Kansas City Chiefs. And it was almost that old cliche from worst to first. So that was great. But the next couple of years, the fans was a little different. I can remember walking to the sideline, and there was a lady in the stands. I see it now on some replays. Lady in the stand and had a little black dog, looked like it was on a rope just dangling. I guess let's hang him,
Oh, no.
But got fan mail. You get fan mail with no return address. You open it up and you just throw it in the trash can. But the one that really got me was I had a nice box. It's amazing how much time they took to wrap this box. And when I opened that box, it was a rotten watermelon in there and a note that say, throw it to these ends. They can catch this. I mean, that was truly amazing to take that much time to put a rotten watermelon in there to write a rotten note.
But you had almost taken this team to the Super Bowl, and then these fans turned on you that quickly?
Well, then, we all got to be real. 1978, it wasn't so much about turn on. It's that you got a black quarterback. You got a black quarterback. And, it was almost unheard of. It wasn't used to it. No matter what you did, it wasn't good enough. That's just the way it was. And I understood that. Coach Rob used to always tell us, hell, you just got to go out and outplay them, and ain't nothing they could do about it. If you can play at Grambling, you can play anywhere. And that's the attitude we took. And I had my oldest brother to confide in and James Harris, who I called all the time. But the good thing, I had John McKay. I had John McKay. Here's a guy that had, in 1965, in the middle of civil rights movement, Jimmy Jones was his quarterback.
Yeah.
I think it lets you know it wasn't about color with John McKay with his quarterback. And he felt like, he always told me, he said, Doug, ain't no doubt about it. He said, the best athlete gonna play for me and the best player. He said, so you don't have to worry about it. And always was fun of what Coach McKay said.
And he was so, I don't want to say ahead of his time. I mean, he was, but everybody should have been ahead of their time, or it should have been what was real in the moment. But here's a guy who, he takes a USC team to Alabama, and all of a sudden, Bear Bryant sees these great athletes there, and all of a sudden says, I got to get me some of those great athletes there. And it was.
Well, the thing about Coach McKay, he was passionate about his players, and he didn't care what color they were. At one point before I got there, I can remember they told me that he was going up in the stand at a fan for somebody to yell him out, take them ends back to California, because he had a bunch of guys from California off the USC team, and rightfully so. They was winning. So you want guys who can win. But Coach McKay protected his players no matter what color they were, and I thought that was a plus.
Wasn't there a time when you were starting in the NFL? I don't know if this was Tampa, maybe it was Washington, but you were the at least 50th highest paid quarterback in the NFL at the time? Does that sound about right?
I was in Tampa. I was number 54.
And you were starting?
I was a 54. It was only 2018 at the time.
If I do the math there.
and I come to find out that the backup quarterback, Mike Ray, who had played at SC, Mike Ray was making more money than me, and he was my backup.
Oh, no. How do you not get angry? Or did you?
Well, you know what? That's a good question. Not that I didn't get angry, but you know what? What could I have done? Back then, you and I both know back then, if you got cut and somebody get on the telephone and tell you, I wouldn't take this guy and, he's this and he's that, you was gone. Wasn't no salary cap implication, wasn't nothing. You just out the league. You wasn't getting another opportunity. So to me, it was all about being humble and deal with it for what you have to deal with. I played all my life for nothing in college and high school and enjoyed the game, but now it's a business. But at the same time, you was getting paid. It might not have been fairly, but after the 5 years was up, when it was time to negotiate, I thought I looked at it from a different perspective then.
I just brought up a couple of minutes ago, prior to you joining us, that I think Kaepernick and the best landing spot would be Kansas City. Andy Reid just won a Super Bowl. He brought in Michael Vick after he went to prison. You got the most secure position in football with Patrick Mahomes, and you could bring him in as a backup quarterback just to get him back in the game, and then maybe he gets a fair shot with somebody after that. A real contract, a real offer. What do you think about that?
I think, when you talk about Andy Reid, number one, you're talking about a number one individual. I had an opportunity to talk to Andy Reid right after he brought Michael Vick back. And what I asked him was, Coach, give me one reason why you bring Michael Vick back. And he told me he was as real can get. He had two sons, and they had gotten in a little trouble. He said, hey, my son got in trouble. He said, everybody deserves a second chance. And then you know what? That was good enough for me. And I think if anybody could stomach that and handle Kaepernick and mentor him and understand where he's coming from, it would be Andy Reid.
If you didn't go to the USFL, didn't you go to Oklahoma, I believe? I wonder,
Oklahoma Outlaws, right?
like, how important that was for you to get back into the NFL.
To be honest with you, Dan, it wasn't.
Oh, okay.
I did not play one single down of football in 1983. And I always looked at it from this standpoint. You know, when I went to Grambling State University, it was not to play professional football. I went there to get a degree in health and physical education to be a coach. My oldest brother was my first coach. I wanted to be like my oldest brother. And in 1983, when went through the contract situation with the Buccaneers, I spent the whole year at Northwestern Middle School in Zachary, where my brother was the principal as a substitute teacher. So, and you know, and then I had a baby girl at that particular time. So football wasn't that important to me in 1983 because I just lost my wife, and 83 was, you realize in life that football might not be as important as life, and the most important thing is you being happy doing what you want to do.
Who's going to play you in the movie?
That's a good question. I don't know. You know, my kids, I was on a Zoom call with them last night, and all they was talking about getting their tailor-made suits ready and their black dress to walk the red carpet. I got a son who's actually the quality control coach in the quarterback room down in New Orleans. And he said, well, Dad, I can play a young Doug Williams.
All right. Can he throw like you?
I tell you what, he had a good arm. He's taller, he's skinny though. He's about 6'4". He played for me at Grambling, and we did win a conference championship with him. So, but he's been down there with Sean Payton in the last 3 years, so he's doing pretty good.
Did the Redskins consider Colin Kaepernick? Since you work with them, has that conversation has that ever come up?
No, it didn't never come up. Dan, I think what happened here, you know, we're in a heavily military area. And I think the guy that sits on Pennsylvania Avenue, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, has made such a big stink of it. The fans in this area might have been a tough situation for both the team and him. And sometimes you don't want to bring people in a situation where nobody's going to be happy. And I think that's probably what happened, why he didn't come up during that time. Great
to talk to you as always. I wish you luck with the movie. Hope you find somebody handsome who can throw a nice spiral to play you in the movie. And the book is Quarter Black. It's Doug Williams, the former Super Bowl hero. Great to talk to you again, Doug.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
All right.